This week, in a move swiftly denied by the appellate division in the state of New York, Donald Trump was compelled to acknowledge before the court that he has the necessary funds to cover the bond required to appeal Judge Arthur Engoron's decision against him. What makes this story intriguing is that when Donald Trump's attorneys filed the move to appeal on Monday earlier this week, I made note of the fact that there was no proof that he had actually placed the $455 million required to be placed in a secured bond. If he loses the appeal, it goes to the state right away. However, as I mentioned on Monday, he hasn't put up the money, so he can't technically appeal this ruling yet. On Wednesday, he goes to the appellate division, where his lawyers make the following argument: if there isn't a stay on the terms outlined here, properties may need to be sold in an emergency to raise capital. If the appeal is successful, there will be no way to recover any property sold, nor any way to recover the associated financial losses. In other words, they were requesting a stay of the ruling from the appellate court, essentially stating that 1. You cannot force us to pay. 2. You must stop charging us interest, which is killing us $112,000 every day. And 3. You cannot allow Trump to conduct business in New York while we appeal this decision. The appellate court responded, no, we're not going to do that, but also added, I'll tell you what, we'll let him keep doing business, okay? We're not going to enforce that part of the ruling that bars him from conducting business in the city of New York. The appellate court stated that he can always take out a loan from the banks right now if he needs cash to pay this bond. To me, that was incredibly cold-blooded. The court essentially told him, yeah, you know all those people you just defrauded. Why don't you go ask them for some money that is due? And you can continue doing business in New York. Harsh. I'm not sure what the court intended. That may be the case, but damn it, that's cold. People like, oh yeah, all those people you defrauded want you see if they'll loan you money. You constantly claim on social media that there were no victims, that the banks were paid, and that they were pleased. Why don't you go check out how happy they are now? God, I adore that. But Donald Trump did, of course, offer a counter-proposal. He said, what if I give you less than a quarter of that instead of $455 million? Trump is now acknowledging that he does not have that kind of money. He had boasted in a deposition in the Egan Carroll case that he actually did have $400 million cash on hand in the bank, but even if he had $400 million, that is still not $455 million. Not to mention the fact that if he wants to appeal, and what if I just pay you $100 million? How would that work? Of course, the appellate court was like, no, you have to put the full amount in there. The clock is ticking. He only has 30 days left. And it's already been, 10 days at this point? Tick-tock. You better get moving and sell off some of those properties, because if you don't, you're going to owe the full amount and there won't be anything you can do about it. The Eugene Carroll verdict against him requires him to put up $83 million. And he definitely doesn't have 500. So what would that be? $38 million. Either way, one of those lawsuits won't be able to have the full amount in the bond. However, if you look at it legally, his lawyers essentially said, look, if he goes and he sells off all these buildings in order to get the money, but then he wins the appeal and doesn't have to pay the money, well, now he's lost assets, except the counterargument to that, which of course is what the court bought into, is that he may not have the assets, but he has their value. So if he had a building worth $18 million that he no longer has, but instead he has $18 million, he didn't really lose anything. He didn't really lose anything. He just moved assets from one side to the other. Although it is shocking that his lawyers said such a thing, he didn't actually lose because he now has the money to try to buy the building back or simply buy a different one. As a result, he is not losing any assets. Nevertheless, the judges weren't persuaded, even though it wasn't enough to convince them that Donald Trump should be spared. Nope. You're dealing with the criminal justice and civil justice systems just like everyone else. And regardless of who you are or how much money you have, you're ultimately treated under the same conditions as the rest of us.